Hi, welcome to my quilting beehive. Today we are working on the Colchester Mill Marvelous Mystery for 2023. And this month we are going to start making our quilts dazzling by using the 45-degree diamond dimension ruler to add some diamonds to our mystery quilt. This is the unit you will be making this month. It has 4 diamonds in a row with some space between them. And we're going to start easy. We're going to make a block that is a little bigger than it needs to be. We're going to trim it up, and we're going to make sure to have a block that has a little extra floating space around our points, so you don't have to worry about cutting off your points this month. It's a very forgiving block. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. And I'm going to start by showing you how to cut your diamonds. Our diamonds this month are 3.5-inch diamonds. So you're going to start with a 3.5-inch with a fabric strip. For cutting your diamonds, you can't have it folded in half, so you're going to have it open. You will be making 2 strips worth, so if you want to layer 2 strips together, you can to do that. Your first cut when you're cutting is going to be to make the angle at the beginning. So I'm going to come over to this end and I'm going to make an angled cut. You could line up the bottom of your ruler with the bottom of your fabric, but I like to have a little extra so you don't nick that point when you're cutting. So I'm going to move it down. And today I'll just use the 2-inch line. So I'm going to 2-inch line across the bottom of my strip of fabric, all the way across, and it meets up at the corner. And my fabric is lined up in there. And over here, the 2-inch line's at the bottom. It's actually 5.5 at the top because it's a 3.5-inch strip. So you have 3.5 inches right there. And all I'm going to do is cut that angle to remove this piece. Okay. Then you're going to turn your strip around so you can cut right-handed. And I'm keeping my ruler straight, keeping my ruler the same way. We're going to cut 3.5-inch diamonds. So on this ruler, if you look at the lines, we'll turn it upside right for you. You can see 1, 2, 3, and then the 3.5-inch line's a dotted line, the black dotted line. The little white marks are 1/4-inch marks. We're not going to use those today, the white dash, the little X's. We're going to use that 3.5-inch line right there. And that's going to line up with the cut edge of our fabric that we just cut, and we'll get our diamonds that way. So I'm going to lay that on here. 3.5 inches goes along here. 3.5 inches is across the top. And be very careful, you don't nick your curve. I'm actually going to cut from the top down, which you shouldn't normally cut away from yourself. Be very careful so I don't nick that corner. That's important. Or if you want to, you can slide it down, keep that 3.5 lined up, and now I have a little extra at the beginning, so I don't have to worry about nicking that. You don't want to nick your point. That's important. You ruin your ruler. Okay, so I'm scooting it down a little so I can cut away from me. 3.5 inches here, a straight line across the top. And it's just that easy to cut a diamond. So you could put a little mark of a Post-it note along that 3.5-inch line so you remember which line every time so you don't accidentally cut it too wide. So that way it's marking the 3.5-inch line right there. Post-it notes are very handy for these things. And keep yourself straight, 3.5 inches, and cut. And then you slide it down, and you're going to keep going, lining up that 3.5-inch line across the edge of your fabric, and keep going all the way. You can't have the fabric folded in half because the angle will be backwards for half of them, and you'll waste fabric in the middle. So you have to have your fabric stretched out. And if you have a 44-inch wide fabric, you can get 8 out of your strip. If your fabric is a little narrower, you might need to cut some from some leftover scraps from a previous month, or you can cut some from another strip if you need to. When I did your fabric requirements for this quilt, I did include a little bit of extra, so if you need one more strip, you'll be okay, unless you've made a lot of mistakes. So keep cutting until you've cut your whole strip. The pieces around your diamonds are made from triangles that we get from rectangles. When you're cutting these, we have 3.25 by 6.5-inch rectangles. And you need to cut for each diamond block, you need to cut one left to right and one the opposite direction, right to left. That's important, otherwise your diamonds won't line up in the right direction. So when you have them, you end up with 2 going this direction and 2 going the other direction. Once you have your pieces all cut, you can go over to your sewing machine. I'm going to take my diamond unit and I'm going to put my triangles around it. The reason you need 2 different direction triangles is to make them fit around your diamond. This one is going to be completely the wrong direction over here because it's made to go over here, and you can see they'll fit together this way. So I'll take the second half of one and a little bit of a puzzle, make sure you have them all the right direction, and you'll see it makes a rectangle-ish shape when you put them all around your diamond. They're bigger than the diamond because we are going to trim it down later. So that is the direction they go in. When you sew, you're going to sew the 2 opposite sides to your diamond first, and then we'll get the other 2. So I'm going to set these 2 aside, and we're going to do 2 opposite. What's important here is obviously our triangle is longer than our diamond. You want your triangle to be about 1/4 inch past your diamond point when you do this. So I'm going to flip this, so make sure you don't turn it around. I'm going to flip it to the long side of the triangle, goes on the diamond. And I'm going to flip it so we can see it because that's a lot easier to be able to see from this side. And you want about 1/4 inch there. If you want to be precise, you can check with a measuring gauge. I have a 1/4 inch gauge here, or one of your rulers. Make sure it's about 1/4 inch, pretty close to 1/4 inch. I like to have my diamond on top so I can see. Definitely make sure the 2 fabrics stay lined up and don't shift. And then bring it over to your sewing machine and use your accurate 1/4 inch seam to sew along that edge. The fabrics are right sides together. My diamond is a batik, so you can't tell the right side too well. But right sides together and sew that seam. And then I'm going to sew the opposite triangle to the opposite side. Again, leave 1/4 inch past the diamond, and you can check it, make sure it's about 1/4 inch, and line it up. And then we're going to sew that side. Now people get nervous about diamonds and triangles with biased edges. Just be careful, don't pull on your fabric. Let your machine feed it. Don't do any tugging or it will get out of shape. You just want to let it feed. Your hands aren't doing any pulling or pushing. Okay, so once you have those 2 sewn, it's going to look something like this. Go up to your iron, set your seams, and very carefully, you don't, now this is another time because of the biased edges, you don't want to scrub and stretch. So very gently flip your seam so your seam allowance goes towards the triangle. Finger press it into place a little bit and then use your iron. And I like my iron to sit there for a second while I finger press the next one. And then we'll let the iron sit there. And there you go. So you'll see your shape looks like this. And you have these extra tails. So before we sew our next part on, we are going to trim those. I brought my little mat over here so it's easy to trim as I go. I'm going to line up my ruler along the edge of my fabric of the diamond so we can extend that diamond edge right through to that point. There we go. And then I'll rotate it around. I'm always being gentle because it does have biases and I don't want to pull or tug. And line it up with the edge of the diamond and trim off the extra. That will make it easier for you to line up your second diamonds when we put them on. We'll put one here. And be careful, you know, they have to be facing the right way to make it rectangular. And you're going to see it's a little bit wonky, the rectangle, when we sew this together. It's not a straight rectangle, and that's okay because we're going to square this up afterwards. Okay, when you sew your next 2 sides on, you want to make sure you have about 1/4 inch past the far end of the diamond, the long end of the diamond, just like you did before. And it will kind of be about the same length as the little dog ear that's sticking out up here. They should kind of line up right there. So line it up along that edge, and then sew your line. There we go. You can see right there my 2 dog ears are about the same length right in there. And then when I put it under the machine, shift it a little. There we go. All right, sew that seam with your accurate 1/4 inch. Shift it just a smidge, so you could pin it if you want to not have to shift it around under there, but make sure they're lined up. And sew along the edge. And then we'll add the last corner. So the short side of the triangle is even with the short side of this triangle. Flip them right sides together. Shift it so it's about 1/4 inch. Those 2 dog ears will line up. And it lines up on the straight edge. And we'll sew So once you have it looking this, we'll bring it back over to the iron. We're going to set those 2 seams, just give them some heat. And then carefully finger press the seam towards the triangle. And you will see this is definitely wonky. It's not a straight, nice rectangle. It's going to be crooked, and that's normal and expected. It's what we want for this block. We're making it larger. Okay, so that is what you will have after you sew them together, and it's definitely crooked, and that's okay. We're going to bring it over to the cutting mat and square it up next. Once you have them all sewn, you're going to bring them to your cutting board, and you're going to trim them all to squares. They're going to, not to squares, rectangles, sorry. They're going to be 4.5 by 8.5 inches. There we go. So when you do this, you want your halfway point to be where those diamond points are. So half of 4.5 is 2 1/4. So I have my 2 1/4 spot here and my 2 1/4 spot here on my points. And then half of 8.5 is 4 1/4. So 4 1/4 should be about right there. So we have it lined up and centered. Let me see if I can point with something pointier. So my 4 1/4 line is right here, and it crosses through the diamond points right there. And my 2 1/4 is going across this way, just like that. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect. You should have more than 1/4 inch on each end and on each side when we trim these, so it's not going to be cutting off points when you sew them together. It's going to make it a little more forgiving. So line that up, take your time, make sure you have it where you want it, and then you'll trim across the top and trim across the right side, and then you spin it around. And this time you should be able to use the 8.5 and the 4.5 inch lines, but definitely make sure that it's still straight at the 2 1/4 inch line going across the diamond length and the 4 1/4 about here. It doesn't have to be perfect. You might be just a smidge off, and it won't know. Nobody will know if it's not 100% perfect. Make sure you have 1/4 inch on each end. The ends are closer than the sides, so the sides have a lot. The ends have just over 1/4 inch on each end. You're going to trim up all of your blocks, and then you will lay them out with your narrow strips and put them together in rows of 4 with the narrow strips on the ends and in between them all. When you put them all together, you'll have a beautiful row, and that is what we're making this month. If you have any questions, put it up on the Facebook group or send me an email or a messenger message, and I can answer your questions. I hope you have fun starting your diamonds. This is going to make it just beautiful. I can't wait to see these quilts come together. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.